Hello there, welcome back. This is Strife's Talking Points. This is my Friday edition, probably the only video I'll do today. Getting a little bit of traffic on the videos, but I'm not really going to eat up my weekend trying to make these things, since if you kind of look across the top of the video screen there, you'll see I try and do a lot of research, a lot of reading on these. And anyway, here we go. Here is Ilhan Omar versus Venezuelan envoy Elliot Abrams. The headline, was El Salvador a massacre? Was El Salvador massacre a fabulous achievement? This one, there is no way to say that this is not just a complete mess up of how our government works. And I'll kind of go over that, but I want to let you guys watch this minute or so, and then I'll talk after.
Testimonies. Mr. Adams, in 1991, you pleaded guilty to 2 counts of withholding information from Congress regarding your involvement in the Iran-Contra affair, for which you were later pardoned by President George H.W. Bush.
All right. So this guy in 91 has already pled guilty to lying to Congress about the Iran-Contra affairs, and whatever, 8 years later, under what we call George W. Bush, he was then pardoned for those crimes. So basically, that's the crux of this. Pled guilty and then was pardoned.
I fail to understand why members of this committee or the American people should find any testimony that you give today to be truthful.
All right. Now, I'm still in total, complete agreement with her. If he's already been found guilty of lying to Congress about the Iran-Contra affair, why should anyone trust what he says? He's already known that he's going to do this, and until his pardon, I'm assuming he was not allowed to work at this type of post anymore. However, it's going to go off the rails.
If I can respond to that.
It wasn't a question.
On February,
that was not a question.
Off the rails. He's trying to stand up for himself, and she just made a lengthy statement. Strangely enough, I more or less agree with. You don't see this a lot in Congress, where these people commit crimes, lie, and then are immediately placed back in positions.
That was I reserve the right to my time.
It is not right.
That was not a question.
Committee can attack
on February
a witness
8th,
who is not permitted to reply.
That was not a question. Thank you for your participation. On February 8th.
No, that's the petulant child thing there. She made a statement about him. He is trying to stand up to the statement. Essentially, she just, that's a little bit of the grandstanding. Now, do I think this man should be allowed to be in front of Congress as the Venezuelan envoy? No, it doesn't seem like something I think you should do. And we're going to go more off the rails.
1982, you testified before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee about U.S. policy in El Salvador. In that hearing, you dismissed as communist propaganda report about the massacre of El Mozote, in which more than 800 civilians, including children as young as 2 years old, were brutally murdered by U.S.-trained troops. During that massacre, some of those troops bragged about raping a 12-year-old girl before they killed them. Girls before they killed them. You later said that the U.S. policy in El Salvador was a fabulous achievement.
All right, now let's stop right there. She is breaking down a war crime committed by the regime there, or the counter-revolutionaries. There's a big part of Iran-Contra, all these different timelines about weapon smuggling, horrible rebel groups in the region that the U.S. was funding. And here's a list. If you want to take a look at the map there, you can basically see that the U.S. Was involved in pretty much coups or violence in every country in Latin America. I mean, just look, there's maybe 3 or 4 where we were not involved. Continue on.
Yes or no, do you still think so?
Now, 2 separate things. One, during a U.S.-backed revolution, 800 people were brutally murdered. That's one question. Do you think the brutal murder is a good thing or a bad thing? No, she's saying, do you think the policy of setting up the government there was a good thing or a bad thing? Can't conflate those two. No matter how much you want to. You can't conflate a war crime and then moving forward. They don't go together.
Day that President Duarte was elected in a free election, to this day, El Salvador has been a democracy. That's a fabulous achievement.
Yes or no?
All right, so he made his statement. So there was a free election, which, generally speaking, the U.S. probably overturned. And then there was another election, which the U.S. supported, and the democracy that came from that has stayed true.
No, do you think that massacre was a fabulous achievement?
Now, again, she's not circling, she's moving off the point of most of this. She's saying, do you think massacre was fabulous? She needs her soundbite. I don't like when politicians do this. I don't care what side you're on, who you want to be. The whole idea of soundbite politics is awful. It is stupid. It is unnecessary. It's just give me the soundbite I want so that I can spin the story the way I want it to be.
That happened under our watch.
That is ridiculous.
Now, the U.S. wasn't actually putting hundreds of boots on the ground. There was actually a big thing about it where we were basically charged with crimes, guilty of funding these groups, but not actually doing any research or any backing on them. Just really hands-off type of thing for whatever reason. Every time someone tried to go socialist in Central America, the U.S. put the smack down and wrecked the country. You can go look that up. That's pretty easy to go through United States involvement in regime change in Latin America. It should be well known.
Ridiculous question, and
yes or no?
No.
I will take that as a yes.
I am not going to respond to that kind of personal attack, which is not a question.
Yes or no, would you support an armed faction within Venezuela that engages in war crimes, crimes against humanity or genocide, if you believe they were serving U.S. interest?
Now, there's a question that makes sense. This makes sense, so...
As you did in Guatemala, El Salvador, and Nicaragua.
I am not going to respond to that question. I'm sorry. I don't think this entire line of questioning is meant to be real questions, and so I will not reply.
Okay. Now he's evading. This whole first section here is just dumb. Second section.
Crimes against humanity or genocide, if you believe they were serving U.S. interest, as you did in Guatemala, El Salvador, and Nicaragua.
Now, he already had to plead guilty to lying to Congress about this and then received a pardon under W. So what you've got here is the real question. Would you, since you've already pled guilty to it and you've already done this, would you do it again? Basically, if the president told you to do this, would you do it? As he did under Reagan and more than likely George Sr. Real question.
I am not going to respond to that question. I'm sorry. I don't think this entire line of questioning is meant to be real questions, and so I will not reply.
Whether under your watch, a genocide will take place, and you will look the other way.
Now, it's hard not to kind of extrapolate out. It is very odd to see this type of one-sided stuff. I would like to believe that Ilhan Omar is very extremely anti-war, anti-genocide, but you just don't know anymore when you watch politicians. You don't know because they're trying to all make these fabulous statements, and you just don't know. However, this guy, Elliot Abrams, after doing a bit of research here, he does not need to be where he is. And she takes a very awful way of getting there to asking these questions.
Because American interests were being upheld is a fair question. Because the American people want to know that anytime we engage a country, that we think about what our actions could be and how we believe our values are being furthered. That is my question. Will you make sure that human rights are not violated and that we uphold international and human rights?
I suppose there is a question in there, and the answer is that the entire thrust of American policy in Venezuela is to support the Venezuelan people's effort to restore democracy to their country. That's our policy.
I don't think anybody disputes that.
Now, the last part of our question there is great.
Is that the entire
Believe our values are being furthered. That is my question. Will interests were being upheld is a fair question. Because the American people want to know that anytime we engage a country, that we think about what our actions could be and how we believe our values are being furthered.
I would say that she's dead on right there. It took all of that first bit of posturing, roughly 2.5 minutes of it, to come to that last part. And I don't know why, because that first whole bit there is strictly soundbite politics. She's trying to get that little piece out of there. She's got to get him to say, they've got to get this headline right here, real clear politics. You've got to get it. You've got to bring up massacre and rape. You've got to do these things to get yourself out there. And, it's pretty easy to look up around Contra Affair. You can look up United States interventionism in Latin America, all the different countries, all the different places that, we do bad things or have done bad things. And it's very interesting to see this. And a lot of these places are just putting the headline out there and going. Do I believe that this gentleman here, Elliot Abrams, should be back in his position? No. No, I do not. I do not believe that the U.S. needs to go back down the road of interventionism in other countries. Honestly, the whole push right now that you see trying to get our troops out of Syria, out of a lot of these hotbed warring nations, the U.S. doesn't need to be involved. It should not be the mandate of the U.S. to be the Team America world police in reality. It's just, no. Get out, stay out, let these countries do their own things, and stop creating our own nightmares. So thank you. Please leave any comments below. Feel free to like the video. Always helps me know, who's watching, what you want to see. Thank you, and have a great day.